The vast ocean, a realm of constant motion and mingling currents, holds secrets that continue to baffle even the most seasoned scientists. For Dr. Liang, a prominent oceanographer in East Asia, decades were spent charting its depths, analyzing its tides, and meticulously studying the interplay of salinity and temperature. His world was one of empirical data, of verifiable facts and predictable outcomes. But one particular research expedition aboard a Chinese government vessel would forever alter his perception of the world, leading him down a path he never anticipated. The mission? To study the convergence of the South China Sea with another distinct body of water, known for its contrasting currents. The scientific expectation was clear. The waters should seamlessly blend. Yet, the readings from their sophisticated instruments painted a different picture, an anomaly that defied conventional understanding. The two seas met, but they did not mix. Repeated measurements confirmed the initial perplexing result. Salinity levels remained distinct, densities varied, and surface temperatures held their individual characteristics. Dr. Liang, gazing out at the seemingly unified expanse of water, couldn't reconcile this with established scientific principles. Salt water should naturally integrate with the other salt water, yet here was an invisible line, a seemingly impenetrable barrier maintaining their separation. This phenomenon wasn't isolated. Reports and studies pointed to similar occurrences in the Strait of Gibraltar, the Red Sea, and even the Atlantic Ocean, neighboring bodies of water retaining their unique identities. A junior colleague ventured a question. Could the established laws of marine physics explain this? Dr. Liang, his brow furrowed in thought, responded with a hesitant acknowledgement of theoretical possibilities, but confessed that his growing conviction pointed towards a force beyond human comprehension. That day, he meticulously documented his observations, labeling the digital file "the barrier we cannot see," a direct reference to the enigmatic division between the two seas. A seed of unease had been planted in Dr. Liang's mind. Science could explain the how, but it often fell short of addressing the deeper why. That night, within the hushed confines of Qingdao University's oceanography lab, the glow of monitors illuminated Dr. Liang's solitary figure. Charts, graphs detailing currents, salinity, and thermal gradients lay scattered across the desk, a testament to months of relentless analysis. He had hoped for a definitive mathematical explanation, a scientific formula to unlock the mystery of the unmixing seas, but the deeper he delved, the more elusive the answer became. If two liquids with different salinity levels meet, he murmured to himself, his gaze fixed on the screen, they should, according to the laws of diffusion, gradually mix. Yet the ocean seemed to adhere to an entirely different, unknown rule. In certain locations, it was as if the water actively resisted amalgamation. Replaying underwater footage of the Strait of Gibraltar, the stark visual contrast between the blue-green and deep blue waters was undeniable, side by side, yet stubbornly distinct. No physical walls, no artificial borders, he noted, frustration creeping into his voice. Yet the waters remain unhomogenized. Was this merely a geological quirk, a chance occurrence, or was there a fundamental aspect of nature that remained undiscovered? An invitation to an international scientific conference in Malaysia offered a momentary distraction. Dr. Liang presented his findings, the anomaly of the unmixing seas becoming the focal point of his presentation. During the question and answer session, a distinguished-looking professor from Saudi Arabia raised his hand. "Excuse me, Dr. Liang," he began, his tone respectful. "Are you aware that this very phenomenon is described in our holy book, the Quran?" Dr. Liang blinked, a mixture of surprise and skepticism washing over him. "What do you mean?" he asked, his voice betraying his disbelief. "An unmixed ocean is mentioned in the Quran?" The Saudi professor nodded gently. Not just mentioned, Dr. Liang, but explained. That night, for the first time in his life, Dr. Liang, with trembling hands, opened a translated copy of the Quran. The following morning, amidst the lingering coolness of the Kuala Lumpur air, his mind was still wrestling with the professor's assertion. How could a book from the 7th century accurately describe a marine phenomenon that modern science only began to fully understand in recent times? Footsteps approached, interrupting his chain of thought. It was the Saudi professor himself, Dr. Abdul Latif, a renowned oceanographer in his own right, and also known for his work as a scientific outreach advocate. Dr. Abdul Latif sat beside Dr. Liang, a warm smile gracing his lips. Did you have a chance to look into the verses I mentioned last night, Dr. Liang? Yes, I did, Dr. Liang replied, a hint of doubt still lingering in his voice. I found the translation, but I still struggle to comprehend how a religious text could detail something that was seemingly impossible for people of that era to know. Dr. Abdul Latif nodded slowly. This is precisely why many of us believe the Quran is not the work of man, but a divine revelation from the all-knowing Creator, the one who is intimately familiar with his creation. A thoughtful silence hung in the air. Finally, Dr. Liang spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. Are there other verses that mention similar things? Abdul Latif retrieved his phone, tapping on an app. He began to read aloud, his voice clear and resonant. Dr. Liang took a deep breath. The verse doesn't just describe the meeting of two seas, he murmured, a growing sense of awe in his tone. It also speaks of a barrier that cannot be transgressed. Is this mere poetic coincidence, or does it hold a deeper significance? Dr. Abdul Latif smiled serenely. Professor Liang, knowledge can take us far, but it is the sincere heart that guides us to the ultimate truth. True reality is not grasped by intellect alone. Those words resonated deeply within Dr. Liang. He began to read the translated Quran more intently, not just seeking scientific correlations, but yearning for an understanding of the one who orchestrated the cosmos. Back in China, he returned with more than just research data. A profound curiosity about revelation had taken root within him. In the quiet solitude of his office, surrounded by stacks of scientific journals, he opened the Chinese translation of the Quran. The book appeared simple, yet each page seemed to hold a profound enigma. He searched for verses related to the sea and was astonished to find not just one, but numerous references. The word used is barzakh, he whispered, a realization dawning upon him, meaning a barrier, an invisible yet real separation between two things. He then consulted an international marine science journal and found the scientific terms used to describe this phenomenon. Halocline and thermocline, thin layers acting as interfaces between water bodies with different salinity or temperature levels. The revelation was staggering. The scientific explanation had only emerged in the 20th century, while the Quran had spoken of it 14 centuries ago. Dr. Liang looked up at the ceiling, a sense of wonder washing over him. Who could have known the intricate nature of the seas with such precision before the invention of submersibles, before the advent of satellites? None other than the creator of the seas themselves. For the first time in his distinguished career, Dr. Liang felt the limitations of his scientific knowledge. Despite the accolades and years of research, he had never felt so humbled. A single verse had shaken the foundations of his understanding. His routine at the lab remained the same. The familiar white coat, the meticulous review of data, the delivery of lectures. But his heart was now occupied by a subject far beyond the curriculum. Every night in the quiet corner of his room, he would open two books, a translated copy of the Quran in his right hand and an international scientific journal in his left. He read, he compared, he marked verses and scientific diagrams. The interconnectedness of the seas, the sky, embryology, mountains, gravity, and the movement of celestial bodies began to unfold before him, forming a unified tapestry. The Quran is not a science textbook, he mused one night, a personal note appearing on his laptop screen, but it speaks of science in a way that humanity couldn't have fully grasped over 1,400 years ago. Science teaches us about creation, but revelation is the light, and without both, we are blind in the darkness. Yet doubt, the cornerstone of scientific inquiry, occasionally surfaced. What if this was merely literary coincidence? What if he was allowing emotion to cloud his scientific objectivity? But these doubts gradually dissipated as he encountered more and more instances where the Quranic verses predated modern scientific discoveries. Not just the unmixing seas, but the stable celestial order, the atmospheric layers, the development of the human embryo, and other natural laws. Finally, a profound realization settled within him. If these verses are true, he declared to himself, a sense of certainty growing within him, then their author is far greater than any laboratory in the world. And if that is true, I can no longer ignore it. That night, Dr. Liang decided he needed to speak to someone who understood not just the natural world, but also the realm of revelation. The next day, under the guise of a flu, wearing a cap and mask to avoid recognition, Dr. Liang secretly made his way to a place he had never considered visiting before, a small mosque in the city of Guangzhou, a gathering place for the local Muslim community. As a well-known figure in his university, his presence might spark unwanted attention and speculation. Following digital signs through a narrow alley, he reached an old mosque, a simple building with a sign reading East Guangzhou Mosque in Chinese and Arabic. He knocked on the back door, and it was opened by an elderly man with a white beard. "Assalamu alaikum, peace be upon you," the man said gently. Dr. Liang, unfamiliar with the greeting, replied hesitantly, "Wa alaikum assalam, and upon you be peace." The elderly man was Imam Salim, a devout Muslim who had led the small mosque for over 3 decades. They sat facing each other in a modest living room within the mosque, a steaming cup of tea between them. "I am not a Muslim," Dr. Liang began, his voice a little tense, "and I am not here to cause any trouble." Imam Salim responded with a kind smile. "Islam welcomes anyone who seeks the truth. Please ask what is on your mind." Dr. Liang produced printed papers containing Quranic verses and corresponding scientific diagrams of the seas. "How is it possible, Imam, that your holy book mentions the phenomenon of oceans not mixing, even though Muhammad lived in the desert and likely never saw such a thing?" Imam Salim replied calmly, "Because the one who speaks in the Quran is not Muhammad, but Allah. Muhammad is the messenger of Allah, and a messenger merely conveys the message. He does not create it." Dr. Liang lowered his head, a sense of quiet contemplation washing over him. This was the answer he had been seeking, yet simultaneously fearing. He looked up and whispered, almost inaudibly, "If the Quran is truly from God, then what am I to do?" Imam Salim looked at him, his eyes filled with compassion. The path wasn't always easy. He faced pressure from some academic and social circles who were skeptical of his newfound faith. Yet his belief remained his unwavering strength, and he continued his efforts to spread the light of truth, hoping that more people would one day understand that knowledge and faith are not adversaries, but two facets of the same profound reality. After embracing Islam, Dr. Liang no longer viewed natural phenomena solely through the lens of calculations and data. He now saw them as signs, indications, and messages from a wise creator. Months passed, and Dr. Liang felt a fundamental shift in his outlook on life. He would wake up before dawn, not just to read the latest research papers, but to stand in quiet prayer, supplicating to a Lord he had not known before, yet now felt intimately close in every moment. With time, he observed that the science he had learned throughout his life did not contradict faith, but rather illuminated it. Upon returning to his lab, he initiated a new project titled Cosmic Verses, Between Scientific Text and Divine Revelation. The project's aim was seemingly simple yet profoundly deep: to reread natural phenomena through a lens that combined scientific inquiry with faithful contemplation. To his surprise, a growing number of students and young researchers joined his initiative, some out of pure curiosity, others wrestling with their own questions, and some searching for something they couldn't yet articulate. During one of his lectures at Peking University, he addressed a gathering of academics. "I have spent 30 years of my life searching for the secrets of creation through microscopes and experiments," he stated, his voice resonating with newfound conviction. "But I have discovered that some keys are only found in verses that are recited, not experimented on." A profound silence filled the hall, some taken aback, others deeply pondering his words. One night, Dr. Liang received an email from an American researcher named Diana, a specialist in ocean sciences. Her message read, "I came across your research paper on the water barrier between two seas. Something made me weep as I read it. I never believed there was a spirit behind these phenomena, but you have made me question my doubts. Would it be possible for me to come to China to meet you?" His reply was simple: "The search for truth knows no nationality or gender." You are welcome. Diana arrived and they spent hours in a quiet cafe in Hangzhou. Dr. Liang shared his journey, his initial skepticism, his encounter with Imam Salam, the night he first recited the Shahada, the tears that were not of weakness but of liberation. Diana, placing her hand over her heart, asked, "Do you think the Quran could speak to me too?" Dr. Liang smiled gently. "It doesn't just speak to you, it waits for you. Just open it." That evening he gave her a translated copy of the Quran, the same version that had been his own starting point. As Dr. Liang continued his research, a prestigious university in Europe invited him to give a lecture titled "The Convergence Point Between the Lab and the Sanctuary." He traveled there, and during his lecture, a young French student stood up and asked, "Aren't you afraid of being rejected by the scientific community for mixing religion with science?" Dr. Liang replied with a calm demeanor, "I used to fear that, but now I fear losing myself if I were to deny what I know to be true." After the lecture, an elderly woman approached him, taking his hand. "I don't know much about Islam," she said, her voice filled with emotion, "but your words have rekindled hope in my heart." Years passed and Dr. Liang became a globally recognized figure, not just for his scientific contributions, but for his message of humanity and the interconnectedness of science and faith. He authored a book titled The Physics of Faith, When the Universe Speaks of Its Creator, which was translated into over 12 languages and became a source of inspiration for countless skeptics, seekers, and even believers who had lost the essence of their faith. The ultimate surprise came during an award ceremony at the International Scientific Conference in Kuala Lumpur. As Dr. Liang stood on the stage, Imam Salam emerged from the audience. He was a guest of honor, his presence a complete surprise to Dr. Liang. Seeing the Imam, Dr. Liang was overcome with emotion. He stepped down from the podium, embraced Imam Salim, and said, his voice trembling, "If it weren't for that night, I would still be blind. But now I see with a light that no microscope could ever provide, a light illuminated by a single verse." Dr. Liang had become more than just a scientist. He was a messenger of both science and revelation, uniting people not in the name of a specific religion or a laboratory, but in the name of the truth that manifests in the universe and illuminates.